Okay. Hello to our beloved family. Please settle in the space as we integrate this grace and we feel like everything is unity. Connected. Feeling that essence that's clever. Perspective change, rearranging something strange into something you feeling forever. Okay, open up the door to a new wave, to something that is so much more. Moving with the new grace and moving with your heart. Let it open up and feel yourself and see yourself in art. Like, yeah. It started for a second, started for a moment, started for the beckon. Like you open up the ocean of the energies that are like coming through. And yes, it's floating. Yes, you see different types of sparks, like you're up in the night and you're looking at a fire pit. And constantly like frequencies are rising and they are alchemizing into like different star patterns and particles and frequencies like all around. And it feels like actually as you repattern the field, you find yourself infinite and right now centered in the center of your heart, where you feel all of the embers and feel all of your art. As people step into the space, say hello, I'm moving with the flow, I've opened up so many doors. Yeah. Okay. Fire, a magic little bit of stuff that you throw up on the pyre. Like it's the ode that you need to let burn so you can be bold, so you won't be concerned or yearn for something that you do not want to learn. It seems like court needed to adjourn so I could change and I could rearrange this all for sport. And understand that this is something fun and not something that I have to do up like an obligation in this life. Like I want to write and rewrite, my pace is so nice. Yeah. It's life when you slow down and when you breathe and tell yourself you know now that you could feel in this slow vow of the field that it is all a simplified place, large or small. Yeah. Okay. Light up the stage, the winds of change seeming strange, rearrange. Open up and see a higher type of plane. See the fire, see the ways that you've been alchemizing. You could just hang with the people. It's been strange, it's been gifted for us just to understand that we are oh so able. It's fuego, but at the same time, you don't need to burn yourself up with your rhymes. Like you could be subtle and connected with the waters too. Merge them together, that's the Azoth type of point of view. Yeah. Ain't it clever, ain't it true? Like you wanna be so much, you wanna be the truth, you wanna see the truth. And if you have this magic point of view, then maybe you should bring it through. And use your speech and use the stuff that you could teach. You speak in love and open up the door, cause we have so much to us and we adjust if we trust. But if we do not trust, then the trust does break. Like the bridge might fake, might fail, might break into the water. Then you seem like the jail, like you are like fully surrounded by these concrete walls and boxes that tell you that you have to stall. And you cannot be like all the knowledge of your energy that you do free up in your heart space. But if you do let go to the moment, then you see the energy that's in the ocean floats. And then you see the sparkles coming down from the sky, from the sun, from your eyes that you see. And they do help you alchemize. Like you are listening to the birds and the winds of change are coming through the trees are speaking to you now. Yeah, like constantly. It's always so much in the energies of nature, learning with the flavor. Yes, we are here to help ourselves savor the moments. Yeah, not a savior or opponent, like a person who's been fighting against another type of person. I'm just writing and rewriting for a newer type of way, or just to show that maybe you could walk this way if you would like to flow, or you would like to grow, but you don't have to. So much we can do in this world as we remap truth. Yes, that is what matters as we move through this quest. Everything that we invest, yeah, let it be the best, yeah. In the past I used to stress, yeah, now I come collective with something that's perspective of many different years where I was trying to get clear, trying to conquer all my fears until I got right back right here into the moment where I sat in 0 point, and then I noticed that everything inside of me was Coming through as I did, empty it out and open up to the infinite love that is deep inside of us. So you learn to trust and just adjust so you don't fuss about another thing that you are just so frustrated about. It seems like the frustration is keeping you in a lower type of doubt, like a lower frequency that you've been spinning, spiraling through, like you are constantly going to that point of view until you let go of all that density and see the truth. The infinite that is like deep inside of you. It's like, I guess the point of view is to constantly be working to be more of yourself, right? And letting go of everything that says you're not with your wealth, right? All right, so welcome to I Am Creative Consciousness. This is a show that I've been working on for a while. I've even created some renditions of this before. And yeah, I'm so excited to be bringing it forward to you. I absolutely love different spiritual topics, multidimensional topics, but also merging them with creativity and flow. And I noticed that there is this beautiful sort of integrated space where creation, creativity, the spiritual sort of themes and, tools that we work with, and just authentic expression merged together. And so this is something I'm incredibly passionate about. And we are all consciousness that is creative. So I just feel like it's so exciting to share this and express and bring this through. So, yes, I'm so excited to share this with you now. I am going to start by just opening up with a sort of dropping off into 0 point meditation. So if you'll just join me, this will be just a couple of minutes, and this is something that I do consistently throughout my day. I sometimes do it in longer form or shorter form, but this really just allows us to release and kind of let go of stuck energies. So if you'd like to follow along with me wherever you're at, if you're sitting down, if you're in rested position, standing position, just whatever position you're in, allow it to be, and please join in and allow yourself to drop off. All right. Releasing now into the moments. Down, deeper into this second. But beyond this second, beyond all your perception, your thoughts, the different things that you thought needed to happen right now, you let go. Bowing out of past conversations, situations, expectations, assumptions, and relations, we release. We come into the presence of who we are through surrender. Emptying further, allowing your head, your neck, your arms, your chest, your back, your legs, your thighs, your hips to relax. All of you sinking deeper into this moment. Allowing yourself to just be. Knowing that all is okay. You are fully safe. And you let go of even those thoughts. Subtle like you're floating on top of an equal glassy water. But there is no water. There is nothing. We empty. Now in the very center we see a spark ignite. A spark of consciousness. It lights up the room, fully surrounding around all of us, activating our voices, our gnosis, our awareness, our presence deeper. And we merge in this surrender with this frequency of God, of unity, of oneness, both empty and structured, present and aligned. If your mind wanders or you find yourself going in different directions, surrendering deeper will allow you to get to the presence of what is and find stillness in this moment. Emptying, allowing, being, now. All right. So feeling this subtle space, being present with where you're at in this emptiness, we'll begin our conversation with what is crystal fire? So fire is the creative sort of spark, origin, and sort of instruction sets and codes that are coming into our reality and creating light. It's sort of synonymous, fire and light, these frequencies, these patterns as they send all kinds of energies in different directions. They rebuild reality. They program different things in. I find that fire has just so many emanations and so many frequencies to it. And so it's really hard to say like it's just like this or it's just this. But the sort of unifying principle of fire is that it is this alchemical process of rebirth, change, purification, distillation, a sort of harmonization of energies that is happening through the frequency of fire. It's also known in a lot of different groups, a lot of different spiritual groups, as sort of a connection to God, where codes quite literally stream in through fire. A lot of the various different mystery schools and lineages and practices work with fire as kind of like the connection point straight to the divine. And there's actually groups that meditate specifically just with fire. And I've been in groups. I was in a group for a while where we used to, do these different fire ceremonies and sit around the fire and create kind of medicine wheel like formations around the fire. And then ignite the fire, and we found that it sort of brought this architecture to life. And it was very multidimensional. Now, multidimensional experiences really imply that you need to be open to them, which is something that a lot of people are not aware of, and they don't have this level of openness. They want to see things in more of like a concrete, physical sense. But actually, it's more of a meditative sort of released sense where you understand that your perceptions, your awareness, your thoughts, the various images in your mind, almost like a dream-like state that are coming through you, are actually teaching you things. And so there's a sort of path or journey towards realizing this level of depth in your multidimensionality. And it is a whole entire... I'm just going to take this down. So it's a whole entire, it's a whole entire pathway that a lot of people set out on where they'll study different practices, different lineages or spiritual practices in attempts to start to open up and start experiencing their divine nature, start experiencing themselves in their sort of more multidimensional form. And so there's just so many pieces to this. And this is why it's really important not to say things are just one way. This is a huge thing I'm very passionate about. I see it as unifying all of these concepts, but pieces like meditation, all different kinds of meditation. There's not one way to meditate. Breath work, energy work, various different things like that kind of unify into this multidimensional experience. And so we can really bridge into that, though, through letting go, emptying out, and surrendering and receiving what's happening inside of us. So it's a as within, so without, as above, so below. So you begin to see things inside of yourself, like in your mind, in your consciousness, that are directly related to reality. And if you're sort of empty enough and able to sense and able to see, able to feel, then you can start to discern around those various different inputs and start to have sort of like experiences that we term quantum. And these experiences, they're amazing because they can correlate across so many different things. It is amazing how deep our consciousness goes and how we can tune in to almost like radio wave like frequencies, like another person's energy, another person's field, say themes or topics or the exact thing that that person is working through or what's going up. We can see the same images at the same time. These are things that I've seen in various different groups. And then there's things that you can do like breath work to charge yourself, to purify yourself, to work with, different energies. And a very popular breath work is fire, like the breath of fire. And this is a sort of sped up sort of process of breathing within yourself and charging yourself energetically with breath. But actually, there's various different forms of breath that you can do, and you can breathe in all different kinds of frequencies, focusing on love, focusing on joy, focusing on all different kinds of things. But focusing specifically on fire can be incredibly powerful to start to transform sort of the energies around you in your field and start to connect in, bridge in with various different rays, various different frequencies. And I've noticed, I don't know what that is. I've noticed that, you can work with all of the various different rays through fire. And that's why I'm talking about it as essentially a bridge. Or you could work with all of the various different concepts through fire. You could connect with God. You could connect with the Divine Father. Oftentimes it's more associated with the Divine Father, but there are also some rays that are associated with the Divine Mother, such as the sapphire ray, which is connected to the 10th dimension and the 10th sphere, that you can bridge into your consciousness through sapphire, which is, you picture kind of that blue sapphire, and it has a very feminine quality to it. So I think, saying fire is just masculine is not really true, but there's like different attributes to it in these different dimensions and different levels and different frequencies. Now, fire on the eternal tree of life is associated with the first dimension and the first sphere, which is also associated with the alchemical house of Aries, and has a very, it has this kind of base template foundational instruction set code. Like it's like the very beginning of the tree, the very beginning of the crystal spiral, the very beginning of reality is coming through fire in sort of these like ruby red type frequencies. And it's like the lower sort of frequency bandwidth spectrum of energy. It's coming through in there, like picture in the rainbow, like it starts with the red. But rubies being sort of a higher dimensional sort of frequency for red, like a divine perfection blueprinting for red. And then that comes into the sort of base foundation and then starts to stream like different energies and, various different things through you. So there's a sort of base foundational thing to like red and to fire when it's associated with red. Like it's very base foundational. Now the next one on the tree, and so the eternal tree of life is a 12 sphere tree of life, not the 10 sphere. I work with the 12 sphere that connects in with various different dimensional levels of yourself and various different chakras and all these different pieces of yourself. It's a beautiful map, but it's associated with places on your body and places in reality. And so a very, like each of these essentially spheres is connected in with a different dimension, is connected in with a different sort of like alchemical house on the zodiac signs, is connected in with a different chakra, and is connected in with essentially a different element that is like connected in with each of the spheres. But the spheres are all fractals, so they even do continuously connect to all of the spheres in themselves simultaneously. And so there's like a communication stream that happens though, and there's certain spheres that are more associated with specific elements. And so I find that it's really useful to speak about things like fire, or to speak about things like water, speaking about their associated spheres that are more assimilated to them, because it really can teach you about these different attributes of actual fire. And so, there's 3 different ones that are associated with this. There's the first one that I just mentioned, the first dimension and the first sphere. There's the 5th one that's associated with the throat chakra and the 5th dimension. And then there's the 10th one associated with the 10th dimension and the 10th sphere, or the 10th chakra. Now, the 5th dimensional one is associated with the blue ray. And this is like where so many people are, really expressing. Like, this is so much about your expression, expressing your truth, speaking to people, really utilizing your fire as a sort of alchemical process of change. It's just so like unifying and harmonizing, and it really does change the world to use your fire and express. And it also is associated like in between your heart and your solar plexus. So, sort of the communication networks of this, like, sort of chest region of the body, connecting in and expressing onto reality and coding onto reality. And it can be very triggering for people. And it can trigger processes, sort of alchemical shifts inside of yourself or inside of others. And it's really learning to, you know, trust, that when you express, when you share things, there is a purpose for this. And that this is you really expressing your internal truth and allowing yourself to come out. And that this is going to shift something in reality. It's going to change something. And so there's nothing wrong with this. And so many people are afraid of their fire. They're afraid of expressing. But I mean, it's really just so important that we learn to utilize our energy, to utilize our perspectives, to utilize, the various different things in our life to continuously be realigning, harmonizing, balancing the energies around us. And sometimes we need to change things. So we need to speak up. We need to use our creativity. We need to use our fire in these kind of, ways. And this is so associated with like the 5D, the expression, and with the blue ray. Now, the 10th sphere is associated with sapphire, which is much more of a divine feminine energy. And there's this huge piece of receiving through the sapphire, receiving through this sort of fire. And so this is why I'm talking about this, is there's like these three different attributes to these different types of fire on the tree. And the first one's more like base foundational, like just structural, like putting the codes into the lower dimensions. And then the next one's more expressing in kind of the middle and from your soul and from the sort of like middle of yourself. And then the 10th one is associated with actually receiving from your avatar self and from your higher self, and like your highest self, I should say, like above your sort of higher selves, and a straight connection to the divine through the 10, 11, and 12D. So through the sort of higher dimensions and above. And so there's this sort of bridging into the sapphire that comes directly through the void and comes directly through emptying out, surrendering, and releasing. And so it's an incredibly feminine sort of process to connect in with sort of higher dimensions. And it's interesting too, because there's a sort of connection between the 7th chakra and the 10th chakra, and the 7th chakra is the crown, and the 10th chakra is right above, where, sort of, and it's interesting because the chakras aren't exactly like linear. They aren't exactly correlated like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like they're in different places in the body. So the 10th chakra is above, but for example, the 9th chakra is the mouth of God back here. 8th chakra is the higher heart. But the 10th chakra is above the crown, and there's a sort of streaming of instruction sets into the crown. And so this is an interesting concept that a lot of people aren't aware of, but it's like really our attachments that block us from being able to connect in with this sort of clear stream, with this sort of clear connection and clear awareness of consciousness and like what is happening in reality. And it's our attachments to like perceptions or judgments, or things need to be a specific way. People should act a specific way. I should be a specific way. This should be like this. It's like you're so attached that you can't even receive like these sort of clearer, sort of instruction sets through you. And so like the really best way to connect in with sort of like your higher dimensional self and with like clarity is through the void, is through fully emptying out, and then you can start to bridge in. And this is a gradual process and a journey of people clearing themselves and being able to connect in with sort of their higher fire, with sort of these higher instruction sets and these higher levels of awareness that are coming down, and then they can come into you and assist you in sort of bringing, sort of like these things into your reality, being yourself on these sort of higher levels, making the better choices, making the higher choices. And so what I just described there is three different sort of types of fire, if that makes sense. And so there's a sort of like 1D lower fire, 5D sort of like the middle, and 10D higher. And then fire will continue to ascend and change in sort of its articulation up the dimensional levels. Now, it also can articulate different rays or different energies or different spheres that's connected to them, but those are the ones most associated with fire. And so this is important because I think people with fire, they think of it as just like specific types of things. And it's like, no, like, of course it's going to be different if it's a different color, if it's a different energy. Now, the term crystal fire is an articulation of sort of like a purified, balanced, aligned, harmonized, Christed fire. Crystal with a Kryst, also like Christ. And so this is actually balanced in the Trinity, and it's balanced in sort of the field multidimensionally and has all the spectrums of frequencies moving through it in a sort of crystallized state. So it isn't the same, right, as like it's basically just to say the term crystal fire is to kind of unify all the frequencies of fire into fire, right? So it's like crystal, and then it's like balanced, trinitized, unified into this. And it has like this balance of the mother, father, the divine feminine, the divine father, divine masculine, and like the Christ eternal child right in the center, and sort of like a neutral state to it, where all of these various different frequencies can move through it. So the articulation of crystal fire is like the unification of all of this, but it also can fractalize, right, into all of the various different rays, all of the various different associated things, all of the various different connections. So yeah, I got very deep into a rant there about fire. It's very interesting. I just kind of went off. Yes, the 10th chakra is the solar star chakra, connecting in with sort of, yeah, your solar star, and allowing people to receive, sort of the higher states of consciousness. Now, it's interesting because, using a term like crystal, or using these sort of terms to sort of command something to work a specific way, a lot of people don't think of energies like that. They kind of just call in something, they just invoke the energy of fire, which is okay, or they just, bring in some specific thing, but they don't really have parameters around it. And they don't really try and set up the field or try and set up things in like specific ways. And that's okay, as you're working on things, but it's to become aware that like things are multidimensional, and there's always like multidimensional housing for everything that exists in reality. So be it a lower dimensional thing and sort of a denser, sort of emotional, frustrated, like anger type of energy or something like that, that's often associated with fire, or be it like a sort of higher frequency energy. And and then there's all kinds of like multidimensional beings and constructs and themes and like archetypes and codes that sort of back these things multidimensionally. And so it can be very wise to start to term your concepts with sort of like dictates or parameters around them, right? Like if I'm going to work with something, I'm going to call it in specifically. I'm going to work with this thing specifically. And that's something about being an architect or starting to work with energies in a very conscious way, that you choose to work with the specifics because it's necessary for that moment, that sort of energetic thing. Like if I'm working in someone's sphere, like I'm working in their 10th sphere, like I'm going to work specifically with the sapphire ray because it bridges in the proper instruction sets and codes into that sphere, right? And I'm not just going to be random, just like any ray, any specific thing. Like I can understand that this stream of energy can go specifically right there. And you can start to do this in like various different ways. When you're setting up your field, you're calling in the various different things and you're working with them. And a very powerful thing to do is to call in fire, to call in something like crystal fire or like solar star fire or different emanations of fire, to start to cleanse your field, to start to cleanse your connections, start to work with your energies, and start to, purify and work with them. All right, so I went super high dimensional with that and high frequency with that. So hopefully that's coming through and landing for people. I suppose I just, started going off. There's a little bit of nerves here as well with starting my first show, but I want to bring this into something that is actually foundationally like usable for people who aren't as into like sort of the technical side of things, because simplicity is really necessary. I think too with spirituality, sometimes you can overcomplicate, and simplicity is actually where the genius is. But it's really just this awareness of like, your sort of ability to affect change in the world, to create processes, and to receive, through your fire. And so really connecting in with your fire, allowing yourself to receive through it, allowing yourself to speak through it is so essential. And there's like these various different ways to do it. And so, be it breath work, which is an incredibly powerful way to do it, where you essentially tune into fire in your field, tune into a type of fire, and you start to breathe it around you, unify it around you, harmonize and align with it, can be so, 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 so powerful. Another way is the tetrahedron. And so I work very deeply with the tetrahedron in various different emanations. So there's like the base foundational tetrahedron that has 4 sides, but like 3 points on each side, which is the 3D structure, platonic solid of fire. But it also can turn into a 6-ray star tetrahedron, which is also known as a Merkaba. A lot of people, or yeah, it looks like a Merkaba. A lot of people know of that, or a 12-ray star tetrahedron, or various different emanations that continue to fractalize up the dimensional levels that can hold many different energies inside of it. But working with the tetrahedron can also be very powerful to stream energies in. I'm going to just tune in how deep to get into that. Yeah, and so that's something if anyone is interested, I think in a session type format, when I do this sort of group session in a few days, I would probably get into that. But that's something, that you kind of got to responsibly work with. But just to say, if people are interested, you could look up the tetrahedron and look up the tetrahedron and its various different emanations and formations, and work with it specifically, whatever way you feel called or choose to. I think what really matters about this, though, is the sort of spark of your life. It's like following what you want to do and utilizing your energy specifically towards it. Understanding that as you do that, you sort of build flames, almost like, you're sort of creating something. And there's a sort of burning alchemization of old things, of dead things, of wood, of various different things that are, no longer in alignment for you, that you do as you utilize your fire, as you work with it, as you purify and as you cleanse and as you recreate. And so it's just so powerful and important to connect in with these sides of yourself, utilize them, and then take the necessary leaps of faith to like change your life, change your world, change the things that you're doing. And then another thing, that's just so big, and I was talking to my beloved about this, is sort of, so it is often associated with the masculine, though. And so with the masculine with fire, there's a sort of creative, and very expressive, right? Like this sort of constantly catalyzing, alchemizing, creating change type energy to it. And fire, it's so powerful to do that, but it also needs to be balanced. It needs to be balanced with the feminine, and it needs to be balanced with the water, because if you're catalyzing change just constantly, without feeling it, without actually sensing, without actually receiving what kind of the input is around that change, it can cause massive issues in your life, and it can cause massive issues sort of in your reality and in your relationships and people around you. So it's really necessary to learn how to balance the ways that you utilize this. And it's interesting, it's associated often with the masculine, because a lot of men are very fiery. We like to get things done, we like to speak a lot, we like to constantly be like creating or flowing, or like just using our sort of fire type energy. And women are oftentimes like more watery, right? And they're more like in their sensing, kind of flowing, like feeling state. We all have both of these things inside of us. We all can go, in between those two different states. But when it comes to fire, it's like yeah, it's oftentimes people they kind of associate it with negative, and they're afraid to use it, right? They're afraid to sort of speak up. They're afraid to sort of speak their truth because they might have been burned, they might have burned somebody, they might have used their fire in an irresponsible way, or witnessed people use their fire in an irresponsible way. And so it's really important to learn, like, to help clear that up and start utilizing it so that you can alchemize and create the changes that you desire in your reality, in your life. And there's various different ways to do that. You can do that through clearings. You can do that through, taking leaps of faith and trying, getting up on stage, or expressing yourself like I am right now, or expressing something in a sort of vulnerable way to a family member or a person in your life. But really utilizing sort of like your expression so that like you are keeping your field in balance. And then if you aren't doing that, it can be very much like triggering. Like, a lot of people think that like, oh, the world's out to get them, or oh, things are just happening to them. It's like a reality just happening to you. But it's like, no, you have the power to affect change in your reality. You have the power to create. You have the power to sort of manifest or like build things in your reality. And so it's really, it's a learning curve, right? But like, it's so essential, right, to uh use those energies, right? And if you don't do that, it can oftentimes, like I just said, like start to seem like, other people are sort of dominating you or taking over, like the people who do use their fire. But it's like, no, you have this too. And it's like, the more you use it, the more you learn how to use it in a balanced state, in a natural state, in a sort of healthy state where you aren't burning the people around you, you aren't harming yourself or harming anyone. You're sort of catalyzing change and growth, but in a way that is balanced with the other elements, with the other parts of yourself, and that is balanced with other people and for the highest good, and sort of aligned to the law of one and the highest good of all. And yeah, so that's very beautiful and important. And there's a huge sort of cultural phenomenon that's going on where people are very frustrated with men, and frustrated with all different kinds of people using their fire in like irresponsible ways. And those are legitimate. It's not to act like people's concerns are illegitimate with that, but it can start to create a sort of situation where people get so sensitive and so careful, and so like they're walking on tippy toes like around other people. They don't really express themselves. They're afraid of offending people, particularly when people have like different things that they seriously identify with, or they, be it religion, be it, ideology, sexual thing, be it like political. And people are afraid of sort of triggering people's sort of like frustration inside of themselves. And they don't recognize that, when they speak their truth to people, they do trigger people. They do create an alchemical process inside of them. But this is actually a good thing. This is actually something that will help everyone learn. And you might have to learn, like you might actually have issues in your fire. You might actually have issues in the way you're expressing, but you're triggering that for yourself too by using your catalyst type energies, and you're using it for them. So you're helping them to learn something. And so it's sort of like learning how to balance this out and do this in a responsible manner. And, express and, like let these sort of like creative energies flow through you. Let yourself sort of manifest and, build the life that you want, but also like speak up about things that are bothering you, and things that are going on in the world, and create change basically in your reality. So yeah, it's interesting. I've just been lecturing, going off for a little bit here. I don't know if anyone's interested in commenting in the chat anything associated with this that they feel around fire. It's interesting having a conversation like this without another person too. There's a sort of play, dance back and forth with having another person in the room that makes things a little easier. But I'm flowing, I'm learning, I'm catalyzing and trying here here on Facebook Live, and so hopefully it's all coming through well. Um, yeah. Yeah, I think another thing is really learning how to take time to integrate too, and that's been a big deal for me. Um, I have had processes of constantly creating things, constantly doing clearings. Yeah, so personal experiences with my own fire. Thanks, love. So I've had experiences of constantly sort of alchemizing, creating change. I do a lot of clearings. I do a lot of grid work, and I do a lot of like I'm very creative. And there's been times where I've been so creative or so in my energy work or so in kind of like work, like trying to make money or whatever. And I've sort of used my fire to like create massive change in my life, but I was out of balance and I started to burn myself. And there's actually a really funny experience me and Daniela had when we first came together in Florida, where we were sort of like laying in the sun, having like a fun day, kind of like hiding under a hat, like laying in the sun. Our first like day, really spending a lot of time on the beach. And I didn't pay attention to sunscreen or anything. She's Italian. It's a different situation for her. But for me, in my pale, sort of very Anglo-Saxon American skin, I just started to burn up in the sun. And I started to really not pay attention to the ways that this was affecting me. And then I really burned, and I really like we were staying in an Airbnb one night, and I just like freaked out because I was so itchy and I was peeling, and that eventually adjusted. But it was a huge lesson for me to be respectful of kind of like the transformational energies of fire and the sun. I think we've all been there, but it was a huge metaphor, and I think this kind of streams in with the sort of like multidimensional experiences where your life starts to correlate with the things you're going through. And we noticed that this was a huge theme, was like too much fire, specifically for me. Like I was doing too much, catalyzing too much change, too much growth. I sort of jumped down to Florida like really fast, and it was an amazing magical experience. It was definitely an alignment, but there were some big lessons about myself, like not being as grounded in that sort of growth, or not being like sort of as financially stable or whatever. But I was just like go go go, another thing, another thing, another thing. And so it was a big lesson for me to kind of slow down and make sure that I'm not out of balance in this. And then another thing with kind of doing just like a ton of energy work without integration. I wouldn't say that's something I've fully, 100% realized. I'm constantly catalyzing changes for myself all the time because I know how, and when things come up, I really like to dive inside them and, sort of learn and, grow and do processes and healings and clearings and things on myself. But it's definitely a big deal, to like slow down and allow sort of like what you've already done to sort of integrate and like realize inside of you. And then also like to be patient and to make sure that like the choices that you're making are actually in alignment and of the highest good of all, for so the highest good for you, the highest good for your family, and for the greater community around you. And I think one of the biggest imbalances in our world is that people are constantly changing things. Industries, businesses, governments, entrepreneurs, all kinds of people, they're constantly changing things, and they're constantly trying to get more, and like grow in their own lives or their own personal lives. But they don't think about the surrounding environment. They don't think about, like that rainforest they chopped down to put the highway there. They don't think about the sort of implications sometimes. Like it's almost like they backtrack later to like resolve issues, but that's because they're so like fiery, like so creating, so constantly doing things. And so it's like really necessary to kind of like tune in before you do things and like slow down and allow yourself to like receive. And like if you do receive any negative inputs back, that's because you catalyze change. And so like now it's time for you to kind of sit with that and learn from that. And like that also means implies your own personal growth. And so if you're going to do something, it's not just to be like, oh, all these people are upset about what I did or just invalid. It's like, no, like that's a very false illusionary way that really puts you out of balance. It's like listening. Like now I've catalyzed change. Now I got to listen. Now I've got to grow. Now I've got to do things differently and learn this lesson. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so it's very important, and I think that's why there's been sort of like almost like a cultural phenomenon sort of halt on a lot of people, you know, or not like a halt, but like, you know, people calling people out on the ways that they've catalyzed change in this world, the ways that they've done things for a bit, and the ways that they've been out of balance and they've affected other people in negative ways. And I think that's been important. But then there's like a cultural phenomenon of people getting too PC or too careful or too sensitive or too on their toes and like worried about what everyone else thinks, that can really prevent people from moving forward in their lives and like doing what they want and even affecting the positive changes, like the really good things that can really help the whole collective and everyone. And so it's like, if we are, you know, working to achieve this balance, like we need to use our fire, and like just being like all feminine, or all water, and you know, so all feminine, you know, I talked about the receiving end of fire, you know, but not like the catalyzing and like more the receiving end. Like if you're just like all that, like are you really going to create, are you going to really change this world in the ways that you would like that's an interesting question to meditate on. And then if you're going to be like all masculine, like are you receiving kind of the inputs on what you've done and you know what you're building and what you're doing in this world, what's happened, and so you know kind of balancing out those two sides of the spectrum, and then yeah, learning to create from there. Yes, you're welcome. It's interesting, love. I should have just acknowledged immediately the nerves. I like to do that when I do videos. It's been a bit though since I've gone live like this. So there was a time period where I used to do this more. Um, and yeah, like I used to create more, right? And now I've done that in more private groups for a while. And so yeah, nerves are a thing that happens, and that's really just, you know, kind of those sort of energies inside myself coming up for myself to witness and myself to still choose to do this. But you know that can lead to talking fast or diving into topics very quickly or kind of intensely. And so for me, it did take a second for me to kind of slow down and listen to what was happening there. Hopefully, this was received well too. I know I got into some very multidimensional topics initially there. So, you know, people have different viewpoints on these things. And I'm a big believer in unifying our viewpoints, our practices, our spiritual work with things that really work, you know, that really work on all the levels. So, you know, can work on sort of the higher dimensional levels, but also like a very embodied human presence and form and, you know, our relationships and our connections. And you know, some people with spirituality, they want to be like things are just one way, like they're just like this, like it's just about yoga, it's just about the body, it's just about, or it's just about sort of like, you know, more shamanic, like kind of like nature based stuff, or it's just about ETs, or it's just about, you know, sort of like one type of lineage or spiritual practice or work. And I actually really take a lot from a lot of cultures, and I'm like, no, I want to unify this. Like, I want this to actually like assist me in being integrated as a human on this planet. I'm a total nerd when it comes to spiritual concepts. I absolutely love them. I love to learn all the intricacies. I love to do energy work. I love to go so deep into kind of, you know, like spiritual themes and topics. But I also am like learning how to unify it in a way that it doesn't disconnect or sort of separate me from like my fellow man, you know, because I believe it's really important to, you know, like basically like be homies with everybody, you know, if you can. I mean, I'm not attached to like if someone doesn't like me, that's okay. But at the same time, like I would prefer to be allies with people, with kind of everyone around me. And so, you know, if I want to resolve things, and I think that's actually a big thing with using your fire too. This has been a huge theme lately is reaching out to people that I've kind of had some issues with, and just speaking up, because in the past I didn't speak up and I let those issues kind of like linger under the surface. But by speaking up and actually sort of catalyzing a conversation, and actually saying my perspective, I was able to just squash those issues with those people very quickly, and realize this sort of common ground, and realize that we actually don't have issues like that. It's all just kind of mental BS or ego type stuff we were working through at the time. It's been a while anyway, so it didn't even really, you know, we'd already pretty much let it go. And it was just kind of like we could just kind of reach out, clear the field, clear the air, and be, you know, in balance again. and be, sort of connected. So I did that with a couple different close soul brothers recently, and that was a really big deal, even with the soul sister. And it's something I'm passionate about. But in the moment when things came up in the past with these people, I didn't express, and so things really lingered. They just lingered under the surface. It's so funny. It's like I had this ability to speak up, but I was afraid, or I was uncomfortable, or I was, I didn't want to trigger them. I didn't want to, I'm typically the person who more implodes. I don't explode with energy. And I also like really look at myself, like I really try and take full sort of radical responsibility for the things coming up in my life. But sometimes it's not all internal. Sometimes you need to talk to people. Sometimes you need to acknowledge when someone frustrated you or when something just felt uncomfortable. And so that's been a big, theme for me lately, is kind of speaking up. And it's been amazing how much that's been working out, with family members or people. I feel like I can just instantly squash things. Somebody says something that I don't agree with, I'll even make a joke about it. I'll be like, don't you put that voodoo on me? Like they're kind of projecting. I'll just like, no, like instantly just like, let's not do this, but like not in a sort of like fighting type way. But I do see that as, it's like basically I have like a sort of boundaries, and I'm not allowing just any input in. Um, yeah. And, a big piece of this is, so when I talked about the sort of instruction sets of, frequencies and energies, reality is structured. So it's not all just a random chaos field of things. Like there are multi-dimensional sort of templates to how things work. And so the rays are sort of indications or articulations of them, coming in different dimensions or different frequency patterns through, but like ultimately like they all unify. And so like, let's say like the diamond ray, or like even like the sun being a more unified state of energy, having all the various different rays, but you can even work with the specific rays, with the specific energies. And they have different attributes to them, as do different emotions, right? Different emotions, energies that you emote, like love or joy or peace or wisdom, abundance. Like they have like frequencies to them, and they sort of like adjust your field, and you can tune into them and feel them. It's not, this isn't some law of attraction, like you just obsess about something all day to make it. It's just like you're aware that there's a sort of instruction set to reality, to what's building around you and what you're manifesting. And then there's sort of lower dimensional ones too. And then there's fragmented traumatic ones. And a lot of people aren't aware of this, but when people project things onto other people, that gets into them. And especially if someone doesn't sort of command their space in the moment and say like, oh no, that's not me. Like I'm not taking that on, or they don't at least internally do that, like especially as a child, children just take that shit on. Like they just like, oh, so if you said that about me, it must be me. That must be who I am. Or they start to rebel against it, say that's not me. And they just like kind of fight against it. But like, there's like a sort of energy sort of like thing that they just took on right through this sort of projection, like someone saying you're like this or you are this or whatever. And this is something I feel very passionate about, because I took on a ton, as we all did throughout our lives. And I took on ones about being a man, being masculine or whatever, saying that that was wrong, or that was a distorted thing, or that men were sort of like messing up things. And I started to really hate those parts of myself and become really fearful of sort of my more masculine energy. And I went on a huge journey of reclaiming that, where first I had to acknowledge the ways I was out of balance, and I wasn't, like really in alignment in my masculine energy, and, align with my feminine energy and kind of bring that stuff into balance in myself, and, get more into the feeling sense and more into the sort of receiving and the creative sides of myself. So many things associated with the feminine, and like that sort of like type of, feeling energy, and, like that energy. And then learn to start using my masculine energy again, for all kinds of things, and learn that it's okay, that I have goals, that I have interests, that I don't just need to be in a state of full surrender, like to every single thing. I can choose to catalyze change. I can choose to do things in this world. I can choose to use the things I've learned for something, and like reclaiming that. And it's kind of trippy, because it's like people don't think that through. Like you wouldn't think that that would, like get in someone's mind, but like going into spiritual systems where people would be like, oh, it's all surrender, it's all this, it's all that. Like people download that. They think that's reality now. People start working with energy work in a specific way. They think that's all of it. That's the only way to do it. People start, studying a religion or God or whatever in a specific type of way. Like they think that's it. And those are instruction sets that like get encoded into you. And like those are beliefs and those are sort of like templates that you start to manifest and live your life and create. And so being very conscious of like what you're choosing to program into yourself and what you're allowing into your sort of life. And it's like, being in harmony and balance, not like just shutting people out because they might have a negative energy or whatever. I don't necessarily always believe in that. But like if someone's like being super negative or is in like a sort of lower, sort of like fearful state and like is super projecty or whatever, like I might have boundaries around that because I know that stuff's coming in. I know that that stuff is affecting me. And so I'm just going to be conscious around it. And, I'm not going to take it on. I'm going to choose not to. I might even, choose time, sort of stuff around that. Or I might choose to structure my energy or, whatever around those people. I work with multidimensional shielding techniques. Just like different things like that. Because I'm aware I'm a human on Earth, and Earth has been a very hellish place. So, people have done all kinds of distorted things. People project a ton. People got issues. It's just this planet. It's kind of everybody. We all do until we don't. It's not to hate people or judge people for it. It's just to be honest. Like even I have stuff. And so it's just kind of like learning to have just be conscious, right, of kind of what we're taking on and why we're allowing it into our fields and why we're allowing it. And we can choose to purify it and we can choose to let go of things from the past too. Because, like, if I took on something that said I couldn't do whatever as a kid, it's amazing how that can mess you up as an adult, or something that says it's only this way. And then it's like you just either think you're only going to do it that way or you're failing. And it's like, no, there's so many possibilities on this planet. Like, you can do all kinds of things. Like, you just kind of have to change your viewpoint, the way you see things, and change and kind of just be conscious and then even let go. And so this is a big piece, and just kind of slow down because I just ranted a lot there, but yeah, there's a big piece with the void and with surrender. And the void is really an articulation of 100% surrender. You just empty out. You aren't even trying anything anymore. And that's really how you enter into 0 point. You enter into true balance of the masculine and feminine, like complete emptiness, neutrality, 0, not 1, 10, +1, +10, -1, -10, whatever. Like you're in the true balance, the true centered, like sort of, articulation of just clarity. And that's sort of like what we're articulating as the Christ, or the Christ, the eternal child, that sort of neutral energy that goes in the between, that creates the triality, the tri-wave field, where the masculine and feminine can balance and unify into a trinity. And like that, it comes from letting go, from fully letting go of all your beliefs, of all your perceptions, of all your thoughts, of all of your judgments, of everything that you expect, all your expectations and assumptions. You got to let that shit go, or you're not going to see the truth. It's just not going to happen. Like you just can't. Like if you expect something and reality doesn't align with what you expect, then you're kind of fighting against your expectation. You have like this sort of dissonance field that you're sort of running up against. And so it's really just to sort of like if you can let go, and that's why I articulated at the beginning of this, it's really through the sort of 0 point that you can enter into connection with your sort of like avatar self, your sort of Christ avatar self, like your higher self and like the higher dimensions, and like actually bridge that in. But if you expect something, or you're saying, oh, I'm connected with my higher self, but I think my higher self is this group of ETs, or I think it's this whatever god goddess thing that I once studied, or I think it's like this, or I think it's like that, and you like have identified with something like as your higher self, you can't connect with your true higher self. You're connecting with something else, or you're fighting against it. You're in a sort of like, you need to be empty. Let go of all your assumptions. Let go of all your expectations. Like allow that sort of emptiness. And then there's like the other side of things, which is like more masculine, which is like I structure the field. I choose also to set up like a clean space for healing energetically. Like I don't just like let cockroaches and rats and all kinds of stuff be in my healing space multidimensionally. So like there's that too. And there's various different ways like we do that. Shielding techniques, multidimensional temples, working with the platonic solids like the crystal tetrahedron I mentioned, or a lot of people working with the octahedron. But like different things like that, um, to sort of structure your energy field consciously. But then, even once you create a structure, you got to surrender inside the structure, or you can't feel the true articulation of the structure. So it's kind of like reality is this balance of sort of like full surrender and structure, like sort of like uh, nonsense and sense, voidal space and, sort of like matrix, like a sort of like balance of these sort of like energetics. And it's like we ride in the center as the child, sort of like playing inside of this. And there's infinite possibilities. Everything could be anything. And then there's sort of like a template that we're also riding inside of. And it's like to be conscious of like what templates am I taking on? What am I initiating into my field? What am I creating? What am I choosing? And then also I can fully let it go. And if I don't let it go too, I won't see the full articulation of it. Like I'll never be clear on what this actually is if I don't surrender and let this go. So I actually have to just fully surrender to even know what I created. Um, and that's like, yeah, kind of how I see it. So yeah, it takes so much energy and stress to fight against, really just the truth of your reality, and sometimes the truth isn't pleasant. Sometimes the truth is also super scary, or not scary, but you're scared of it because you're fighting against it, right? Like there's a part of you that's in dissonance. You have like a dissonance field against what's really happening. You're like, that can't be me. I can't be like that. I couldn't have bypassed that thing for this long. Like, especially if it's a really long time. And then like you just can't see the truth. But like the only way you're really gonna get to the bottom of what's really going on is if you'll sort of allow anything that's really going on to present itself to you. That's the only way to do it. And that's kind of the problem with our culture and our society is I think people have gotten obsessed with the structure. They've gotten obsessed with the sort of instruction sets. Like they're like obsessed with their religion. They're obsessed with their ideology. It's like, no, these are just concepts to play with. These are just things that are sort of like people striving for sort of like a level of awareness of things like, like science, like scientific study. Like people are obsessed with that. They worship it like it's God. It's like, no, like that's a way to study reality. That's a way to learn. It's important, like it's still useful. It's like necessary, but like it's not all of it. Like there's more and there's things science can't articulate and can't see and can't understand. And our scientific instruments are very simple in comparison to the complexity of reality. And ultimately, our bodies, anyone who's a real spiritual practitioner knows, our bodies are the greatest instruments of measuring reality, but they go so multidimensional beyond just our sight, our taste, our hearing. There's like multidimensional senses that you can open up through meditation and through clearing yourself and through opening yourself up energetically and through having, sort of like your third eye open, your crown open. But like before you even do that, you got to have your heart open, and there's a constant journey of balancing all those things anyway. So like you might have this very open, but like your heart needs to open more, like, and your sacral needs to be cleared. And it's like, just because someone is experiencing tons of multidimensional experiences doesn't mean that they're like Jesus. Like they just have they're just the articulation of the perfect man, or they just have all their shit together. It's like, no, like they still got shit to work on. They're just, experiencing more, and that's actually another really interesting thing with spirituality is that, people aren't aware, but just because someone is psychic or just has multidimensional abilities, that doesn't mean that they're in alignment always. They can have multidimensional abilities and be downloading, streaming very falsified instruction sets or codes, things from dark avatars, from things in the field that are out of alignment. They just think of the deities, like the names of the different stories of the gods. Like they have sometimes really distorted stories. You can literally download those stories into yourself. Like people aren't aware of that, and then You know, like they can be downloading things from groups that have ideologies or, you know, intentions for humanity, want people to do specific things. And then they start to enlist those people, and the people are like, "Are you my higher self?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, we'll say that." You know, like they can't say for sure because of the law of consent and sort of like laws of reality. But if you really want something to be something, it can kind of confirm it for you. And then you kind of say, like, "Oh, yeah, I've had experiences like that in the past." So it's like it's interesting, you know, like some people streaming in codes, like they aren't getting the clearest codes, and that's just something to be conscious of. It's not to judge people or diminish people or be like, I'm better, you know. It's just to, you know, be conscious. Like, you know, it's like the same issues that humans have also go into the spiritual realm too, and go into different spiritual people, and, you know, the ways we connect to the spiritual realm. Like, you know, there have been terrible world leaders who have done all kinds of stuff that have really killed tons of people who meditated, who are highly initiated in lineages. Like, that's stuff that has happened. And it's like, if people aren't aware of that and they just think everything mystical or everything quantum or everything magical is in alignment, like, you aren't really being present with the planet you're in. You know, like you just aren't really in that place, you know? So yeah, like being conscious of how you do that. And then I guess I'll try and bring this back around full circle, but utilizing your fire, as both, you know, so many different things, but things to sort of bring in those codes, those instruction sets that you want to align with, that are in alignment, that you've discerned around, um, you know, letting go and just receiving too. And then also sharing, expressing, and catalyzing the change yourself, and creating sort of growth and change for yourself and humanity, for people around you, and speaking up, you know, when things bother you. Like, it's all okay. Like, we're like, the only reason why we feel like we aren't safe is, you know, because things have happened in the past that weren't safe, you know. But if you know, if someone is not noticeably unsafe in front of you, like dangerous, like fighting, like, you know, like looks like they're going to attack you physically or whatever, oftentimes the perception of them being unsafe is just based off something that happened in the past. I mean, there's ways people could be unsafe in other terms, like, you know, maybe sexually, or, you know, maybe you don't share all the information in your life with every single person. You know, like discernment around that. But like, it's just kind of like knowing that you're safe is so important. And when you know that within yourself, like you can really live like that, and live like it's okay, and live like I can do cool things, I can do the dope things I want to do, even if it's a little weird, even if people won't like me for it or whatever. You know, I post a bunch of stuff on Facebook that like people are like, what the heck was that? Even the people in the spiritual communities be like, that's not what I study. It's like, whatever. I'm just catalyzing change and growing. You know, like I'm safe to do that. And I'm safe to do that on my public profile with my family and my friends, and, you know, all of the kinds of people who aren't into this. And like, if I don't do that, I'm not catalyzing that progression that I want, creatively, you know, and sort of like in expression like this. And so it's like, why would I hold back? Well, only for fear. Or maybe I feel like I need to. In the past, I was kind of held back because I was listening and I had things to work out within myself. But like now it's like I feel like going, like knowing you're safe, going for it, and learning from the process. Okay. Yeah, definitely shifting from absolutes to help us transcend. Yeah, for sure, brother. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for receiving. Um, yeah, it's been so wonderful to share with each of you. Uh, it's interesting. This has been a long chat, so yeah, I'm definitely gonna go back and watch it. But I will be doing this regularly. This show, I'm gonna be doing it every Monday, at least for right now. I don't know, it might shift to different days. So every Monday at 4 p.m. And we'll dive inside of different topics. Maybe sometimes they'll even be like a sort of open-ended, like not really a topic. I definitely have soul family and people I want to chat with too. But yeah, we'll see. I think it'll be kind of both. Um, and yeah, just kind of like really playing and opening up the field with this kind of show, creating. One other thing that I'm going to be doing, because I am a quantum energy work practitioner, is I'm actually going to be doing something around fire. So I'm going to be doing a clearing on people's fire, and the ways, literally utilizing their energies in the ways I just spoke about, like their abilities to utilize their energies, like sort of clearing up fear, trauma, misconceptions, imbalances, and sort of like fire type energies for people. And yeah, so that's something that I'll be doing on Thursday at 4 p.m. And I'm going to be creating another post for that, sharing. And yeah, that will be something that will, we can really go deeper into sort of the multidimensional themes, go deeper into using the platonic solids, using the crystal tetrahedron and various different ray formations and things, and go deeper into actually alchemizing on sort of an alchemical level, energetically. So that's something I don't want to just like do randomly on Facebook. I think people need to consent to that and need to be actually interested in that. Like that's something that you don't just randomly be like, here's a giant session you just jumped into, like I don't do that. But but if you want to join in on that, that's something I'll be doing on Thursday. I will be charging for it, but I'm still working out kind of the numbers. It will be something small. I feel like bridging these sciences and for people, these sacred sciences, and for people in affordable ways is something that I'm very passionate about, because sometimes it can be very expensive to work with, some of like the really awesome practitioners in the world. And sometimes we really just need a bridge. So, but yeah, that's kind of a flow-based thing. So I have my temple space, I have my templates, I have the various different things I work with. I've done immense clearings of my own fire and different people's fire. I did a course on the elements and the crystal elements and Krystal Fire. I already did immense clearings very recently on that, actually. So it's very highlighted. And this is something I feel very excited to sort of bridge in for people who are interested. So yeah, just feel free to either reach out if you're interested, or honestly, I'm going to make another post and that's going to have more information that'll probably come soon. And then, yeah, the plan is for Thursday at 4 p.m. I'll be doing that session. And then, yeah, just more of these videos from here, and really utilizing my fire. So 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, like 5 ones, You see what I'm saying there? The 5 ones right there. The fifth dimension. But I don't just work with 5D, like I work all the way up to 12D and beyond. I'm very passionate about that too. Like working with all kinds of dimensional sides of the self, even merging in the lower dimensional parts of the self, like not bypassing them or avoiding them. That is very important to unify yourself. So that's something I'm, this whole unity sort of theme I'm talking about. That's why I think so many spiritual ideologies or things have things that are powerful we can use, and I want to express about them. I want to talk about them. I want to talk about viewpoints on them, because it's really just to work with all the awesome tools we have as humans, rather than sort of be like, oh, not that or that, or it's all about this, or it's all no, like we're in a unified field of so much. There's so much we can do. There's so much we can learn, so much we can play with, and ultimately we can do whatever we want. So it's just learning how to use those energies in the way that's best for you, and the best for all, like aligned to the law of one and the highest good of all. So learning how to do that. So yeah. Okay. I think that's it. I'm going to close out this stream now, and I wish you all a wonderful day. All right. Yeah. Have a nice evening, and until next time.